Poor waitress rejected at blind date by CEO's manager? Until he stepped in and said, "I'm sorry he hurt you." Before we continue, tell us where in the world you're watching from. We love seeing how far our stories travel. Emma Carson stood outside the Sterling Room at 7:45 on a Friday night, counting the money in her wallet for the third time, like somehow the bills would multiply if she just checked again. But nope, still $43.67, which meant she could maybe afford a side salad and water if she was lucky. And honestly, what the hell was she doing here anyway? The restaurant looked like the kind of place where people ordered wine that cost more than her rent. Floor-to-ceiling windows showing off all those happy couples who belonged in places like this. And Emma in her borrowed dress from the Goodwill that Jenna swore looked expensive, but definitely didn't feel expensive, was about 2 seconds away from just going home and calling the whole thing off. Her phone buzzed with another text from Jenna, all caps as usual. "Do not bail on me, Emma, I swear to God." Emma wanted to text back that this was a terrible idea, that she couldn't afford to even breathe the air in a place like the Sterling Room, but Jenna had already threatened to tell their nursing school professor that Emma skipped anatomy lab last week to pick up an extra shift at Rosie's Diner. So here she was, about to walk into the most expensive restaurant she'd ever seen to meet some guy named Derek who probably expected a woman who actually owned nice dresses instead of borrowing them. She pushed through the heavy glass doors and immediately wanted to disappear, because everyone in this place looked like they stepped out of a magazine. Designer everything. And the hostess behind the marble podium looked her up and down with this expression that said she knew exactly how much Emma's dress cost, and it wasn't enough. Emma gave Derek's name, and the hostess led her to a table right in the middle of the dining room where everyone could see her sit there alone like some kind of charity case. And she ordered water because ordering anything else felt like tempting fate when she didn't even know if this guy was going to show up. 20 minutes turned into 30, then 45, and Emma kept checking her phone, trying not to notice the other diners, giving her those sympathetic looks that made her skin crawl. The ones that said, "Oh, honey, we've all been stood up before, but it still sucks, doesn't it?" She was about to leave, actually had her purse in her lap, and was mentally calculating how fast she could get to the door, when a guy in an expensive suit walked in on his phone, looked around the restaurant like he owned the place, and the hostess pointed at Emma's table. Derek Walsh looked exactly like his dating profile photo, which should have been a good thing, except his photo didn't show the way he looked at Emma when he reached the table. That quick flicker of disappointment that he covered up real fast but not fast enough. He sat down without apologizing for being late, didn't even take out his earbuds right away, just held up one finger like Emma should wait while he finished his very important phone call that was apparently more important than basic manners. At the corner booth, about 3 tables away, Jonathan Pierce was trying to focus on his daughter's story about her school day, but kept getting distracted by the woman sitting alone. The one who'd been checking her phone every 30 seconds with this look on her face like she was bracing for bad news. His daughter Lily noticed too because she stopped mid-sentence about her art project and tugged his sleeve. "Daddy, why is that lady all by herself? She looks sad." Jonathan didn't have a good answer, except sometimes people are just having a bad night, sweetheart. Derek finally hung up and pulled out his earbuds, looked at Emma like he was seeing her for the first time. "Sorry, work call. Can't be helped when you're on the executive track at Pierce Industries. You know how it is." Emma nodded even though she absolutely did not know how it was, and when the waiter came over, Derek ordered without even glancing at the menu. "I'll have the ribeye medium rare and bring me the 2015 cab." Emma scanned the prices and felt her stomach drop because the cheapest thing was $28, and she had 43 total and still needed to leave a tip. "Just water and a side salad for me, please," Emma said quietly, and Derek raised his eyebrows. "That's all you're eating? You're not one of those girls with food issues, are you?" Emma forced a smile and lied through her teeth. "No, I'm just not very hungry." Derek shrugged like he didn't actually care either way and went back to his phone, scrolling through emails while Emma sat there wondering how fast she could fake a family emergency and get the hell out. The conversation limped along like a three-legged dog, Derek talking about himself for what felt like hours, his promotion track and his investment portfolio and his trip to Cabo last month. And then finally he asked the question Emma had been dreading. "So my assistant set this up. Said you work in hospitality. Where do you work? Ritz-Carlton? Four Seasons? Emma took a breath. I work at Rosie's Diner on 5th Street. I'm studying hospitality management at community college, and I waitress to pay for classes. The second the words left her mouth, she watched Derek's entire face change. He actually laughed, like full-on laughed loud enough that people at nearby tables turned to look. Wait, you're a waitress? At a diner? Jesus Christ, I thought when you said hospitality, you meant like hotel management or something real, not slinging hash browns at some greasy spoon. Emma felt her face go hot, felt that familiar shame creeping up her neck. There's nothing wrong with being a waitress. It's honest work, and I'm putting myself through school. But Derek wasn't listening. He was already mentally checked out. He leaned back in his chair with a smirk that made Emma want to disappear into the floor. Look, I'm sure you're a nice person, but I have a reputation to maintain. I can't be seen with someone who probably smells like French fries most of the time. My colleagues would never let me hear the end of it. The words hit Emma like a physical blow, and she stood up on legs that didn't feel steady, her chair scraping loud against the floor. I should go. I'm sorry I wasted your time. Derek had the nerve to look relieved. Yeah, probably for the best. You clearly can't even afford to eat here anyway. What were you thinking? That this would actually work out? Emma grabbed her purse and was turning to leave when a voice cut through the noise of the restaurant, cold and sharp like a knife. Derek Walsh. The way he said it made everyone within earshot go quiet. Derek looked up and every bit of color drained from his face in about 2 seconds flat, and Emma followed his gaze to see a man standing beside their table. Maybe early 40s, tall with these gray eyes that looked like they could cut through steel. Mr. Pierce, I didn't know you were here. I was just... Derek started stammering, but the man held up one hand. My office, Monday morning, 8 a.m. sharp. We'll be discussing your future with the company. Derek tried again. Sir, I can explain. But the man's voice went even colder. I'm not interested in your excuses. Leave, now. Derek practically tripped over himself getting to the door, and suddenly the whole restaurant was watching, and the man turned to Emma, and his expression changed completely, went from ice-cold fury to something gentle and concerned. I'm sorry he hurt you. That's not who my company is. Emma just stood there with tears running down her face, trying to figure out what the hell was happening. Then a little girl appeared next to the man. Couldn't have been more than 7 years old, with blonde curls and the biggest brown eyes Emma had ever seen. Please come have dinner with us, the little girl said with this very serious expression. My daddy always orders too much food anyway, and you seem really nice. That man was really mean to you. Emma wanted to say no, wanted to run out the door and never think about this night again, but something about the way this little girl was looking at her like Emma actually mattered, like she was worth something, made her nod before she could think better of it. I'm Jonathan Pierce, and this is my daughter Lily, the man said, and they walked back to the corner booth where apparently they'd been having dinner this whole time. Emma slid into the seat feeling like she'd just walked into someone else's life. The owner of the restaurant came over, an older woman with kind eyes and silver hair. Jonathan, is everything all right? Margaret's voice was warm but concerned. Derek Walsh is no longer welcome here, Jonathan said firmly, and our new friend needs dinner on the house. Margaret looked at Emma with this strange expression like she was seeing a ghost. Of course. What can I get you, sweetheart? Lily immediately launched into conversation like they were old friends. I'm Lily. I'm 7 3/4. Do you really work at a diner? That sounds so cool. Emma laughed, her first genuine smile all night. It's not as cool as you'd think. Lots of coffee refills and grumpy morning people. Lily leaned forward conspiratorially. My mommy used to work here. She made the best cinnamon rolls in the whole entire world. Emma's heart clenched and she looked at Jonathan. My wife Caroline passed away 3 years ago, Jonathan said quietly. She was the pastry chef here. Emma's breath caught in her throat. Wait, your wife, was her name Caroline? Jonathan's eyes went wide. Yes, why? Emma's hands started shaking. I knew her. Not well, but she used to come into Rosie's diner on her breaks years ago. She always ordered black coffee and left these huge tips. And one time when I was about to drop out of school because I couldn't afford it anymore, she left me a $100 bill with a note that said, for your dreams. Jonathan just stared at her like she'd told him the sky was green, and Margaret reappeared holding a small wooden box tied with a faded ribbon. "Emma, before you go, I have something for you," Margaret said, setting the box on the table. "Caroline left instructions before she died. If a girl named Emma from Rosie's Diner ever came in here, I was supposed to give you this. She said you'd need it someday." Emma's hands wouldn't stop trembling as she untied the ribbon and opened the box to find a leather journal. And on the first page in handwriting, she recognized from coffee shop napkins all those years ago it said, "For Emma, never stop reaching. The magic is real. Love, Caroline." Emma broke down right there in the middle of the Sterling room, and Lily climbed into the booth next to her and patted her hand while Jonathan sat across from them, looking like his whole world had just rearranged itself. And somehow the absolute worst night of Emma's life was turning into something that felt a lot like the beginning of magic, the kind Caroline had promised was real all those years ago. Emma Carson walked out of the Sterling room that night holding a dead woman's journal like it was made of glass, and she couldn't stop thinking about the way Jonathan Pierce had looked at her when she mentioned Caroline, like she'd just cracked open a door he'd kept locked for 3 years. She sat in her beat-up Honda Civic in the parking lot reading Caroline's recipes and life advice until 2 in the morning, and every page felt like getting a hug from someone she'd barely known but who'd somehow changed her entire life with a $100 bill and a note about dreams. Monday morning came too fast and Emma was back to her regular routine, 5 a.m. shift at Rosie's Diner, where the coffee was terrible and the tips were worse. Then her 2 p.m. class on hotel management, where she could barely keep her eyes open. And finally her 6 p.m. tutoring gig, helping rich kids with math homework, while wondering if she'd ever not be exhausted. Her phone buzzed during her break and she almost dropped it when she saw Jonathan's name. "Lily wants to know if you like pancakes." Emma stared at the text for a full minute before typing back, "Who doesn't?" His response came immediately. "Saturday breakfast, the Sterling room, 9 a.m. Margaret makes Caroline cinnamon rolls on weekends." Emma spent the entire week talking herself out of going and then talking herself back into it. And Jenna finally cornered her Thursday night in their shared apartment that was basically a closet with delusions of grandeur. "You've been smiling at your phone for 4 days straight. What's going on?" Emma told her everything. The whole insane story about Jonathan and Lily in Caroline's journal, and Jenna just stared at her like she'd grown a second head. "So let me get this straight. A gorgeous CEO wants to see you again, and you're what? Overthinking it?" Emma pulled her knees to her chest. "His wife died, Jenna, and I knew her. What if I'm just reminding him of her? What if I'm just a ghost to him?" Jenna threw a pillow at her head. "Or what if you're just a person he likes and you're sabotaging yourself like you always do?" Emma wanted to argue but couldn't, because Jenna wasn't exactly wrong. She had a pretty solid track record of running away from good things before they could fall apart on their own. She texted Jonathan back on Friday night. "I work until 8. I'll be there." His response made her chest feel tight in a good way. "We'll wait for you." Saturday morning, Emma showed up at the Sterling room, still wearing her Rosie's Diner uniform because she didn't have time to go home and change. And the second she walked through the door, Lily literally squealed and came running over. "You came and you're wearing your work clothes. You look just like a real waitress." Emma laughed and scooped her up, even though her arms felt like jelly from carrying coffee pots all morning. "I am a real waitress, sweetheart." Jonathan stood up from their usual booth, and Emma's heart did this stupid fluttery thing, because he was looking at her like she'd just made his whole day better just by showing up. "When's the last time you slept a full night?" Jonathan asked once they'd sat down, and Emma tried to remember. "Honestly, I can't remember. Tuesday, maybe?" It all kind of blurs together. Margaret appeared with a tray of cinnamon rolls that smelled like heaven and looked even better. "Caroline's recipe. She'd want you to have these." Emma took a bite and closed her eyes because it tasted exactly like she remembered from years ago, and for a second she could almost see Caroline standing in Rosie's Diner with that huge smile telling her to never give up. After breakfast, Lily grabbed Emma's hand and pulled her toward the kitchen. "Margaret saved Mommy's old apron. Will you teach me to make her recipes? Daddy can't cook anything except toast." Jonathan followed them, protesting. "Hey, that's not fair. I can also burn water." Emma stopped walking. "How do you burn water?" Jonathan grinned. It's a gift, really. Takes real talent. They spent the next 2 hours covered in flour, while Lily giggled and Emma showed her how to fold dough the way Carolyn's journal described, and Jonathan watched them from the doorway with this expression that made Emma nervous and hopeful at the same time. Later, after Lily had convinced Margaret to let her frost cupcakes in the main dining room, Jonathan turned to Emma. I have a proposition. Pierce Industries is opening a boutique hotel in Boston. We need a hospitality coordinator. Emma's stomach dropped. That's amazing, but I'm not qualified. I haven't even graduated yet. Jonathan leaned forward. You have something better than a degree. You understand service because you live it every single day. The job pays $65,000, full benefits, and will cover your remaining tuition. Emma's jaw literally dropped and she had to close it manually. I can't accept that. It's too much. Jonathan's voice went soft. Why? Because you don't think you deserve it? Emma looked down at her hands that smelled like cinnamon and flour. I'm a diner waitress with a GED and student loan debt up to my eyeballs. Why would you give me this? Jonathan reached across the table and took her hands, and Emma's brain pretty much short-circuited. Because Caroline saw something in you years ago. Because Lily trusts you, and she hasn't trusted anyone since her mom died. Because when Derek humiliated you, you held your head high and walked away with dignity. That's leadership, Emma. What if I'm just a reminder of her? Emma whispered, finally saying the thing that had been eating at her all week. What if that's all this is? Jonathan's grip on her hands tightened. You're nothing like Caroline. She was bold and loud and commanded every room she walked into. You're quiet and thoughtful, and you listen more than you speak. I'm not looking for a replacement. I'm looking at someone new, someone extraordinary. Emma felt tears burning behind her eyes. I need time to think about it. Jonathan nodded. Take all the time you need. But Emma, you're worth so much more than you think you are. That night, Emma couldn't sleep, so she read through Caroline's journal again. And near the back, she found an entry dated 2 weeks before Caroline died that made her hands shake. If you're reading this, Emma, it means you found your way to the Sterling Room. I knew you would. Jonathan is going to offer you something, a job, maybe more. Don't say no because you think you're not good enough. You are. I picked you because you remind me of who I was before I got sick. Hungry for more. Brave enough to try. Take the chance. Love that little girl. And if my stubborn husband falls for you, let him. He deserves happiness. So do you. Emma called Jenna at midnight sobbing. I think a dead woman is playing matchmaker from heaven. Jenna, half asleep, mumbled back. So what are you going to do? Emma wiped her eyes and looked at Caroline's handwriting. I'm going to say yes. Monday morning, she showed up at Pierce Industries in her best interview outfit that was still clearly secondhand, and Jonathan's assistant brought her to his office. I'll take the job, Emma said before she could chicken out. But I have conditions. Jonathan smiled like he'd been expecting this. Name them. I start at the bottom. I learn every department. I don't get special treatment because Lily likes me or because you feel guilty about Derek. I earn this. Jonathan stood up and held out his hand. Deal. When can you start? Emma shook his hand. I need to give Rosie 2 weeks' notice. She's been good to me. Jonathan's smile got wider. 2 weeks. And Emma, thank you for giving us a chance. 3 months flew by faster than Emma expected, and she threw herself into Pierce Industries like her life depended on it, because maybe it did. And Lily started coming to the office after school to do homework in Emma's cubicle. And something that felt a lot like a family started growing in the spaces between work meetings and Sunday breakfast. Late one night, Emma was still at the office finishing her presentation for the boutique hotel launch when Jonathan appeared with coffee. You're going to be amazing tomorrow. Emma looked up at him, exhausted and nervous, and something else she couldn't quite name. What if I mess up? What if the board thinks you only hired me because… Jonathan set down the coffee and pulled her to her feet. Because what? Because you're brilliant. Because you're the hardest worker I've ever seen. Because when Lily has nightmares about losing me like she lost Caroline, you're the one she asked for. Emma's breath caught, and they were standing so close she could count his heartbeats. Can I kiss you? Jonathan whispered. And Emma had been waiting 3 months to hear those words. I thought you'd never ask. He kissed her gentle and real and perfect. And Emma finally understood what Caroline meant about magic being real. Because this, right here, this was it. The next morning, Emma's presentation killed it so hard the board approved the project on the spot and put her in charge. And Lily came running into the boardroom because Jonathan's assistant couldn't stop her. Did Emma win? Lily's voice echoed off the fancy walls, and the board members actually laughed. Jonathan scooped her up. She sure did, Pumpkin. Lily whispered loud enough for everyone to hear. Does this mean you're Daddy's girlfriend now? Emma's face went bright red, but she was smiling. Would that be okay with you? Lily threw her arms around Emma's neck. Mommy told me in a dream she was sending someone special. I think she sent you. 6 months flew by like someone hit fast forward on Emma's life. And suddenly she was waking up in a world that didn't feel like hers, except it totally was. Sunday breakfast at the Sterling Room became sacred. Lily's school play, where Emma helped with costumes and cried harder than Jonathan did. Emma's community college graduation, where Jonathan and Lily sat front row, screaming her name like she just won an Olympic medal, and the boutique hotel opening that got her featured in 3 hospitality magazines, with headlines calling her the industry's brightest new star. The first time Jonathan said I love you was at 2 in the morning when Emma had fallen asleep on his couch after a 16-hour workday, and he'd covered her with a blanket, and she'd mumbled it back half asleep and then woken up fully awake, realizing what she just said. They'd laughed until they cried, and then he'd kissed her and said it again, properly this time. And Emma finally believed that maybe she was allowed to have good things. Jonathan took her to Caroline's grave on a Saturday morning when the cemetery was quiet and the sun was doing that thing where it made everything look golden. Emma brought flowers and sat on the grass like she was visiting an old friend. I don't know if you can hear me, Emma said to the headstone, but thank you for the tip that kept me in school, for the journal, for loving Jonathan and Lily so well that they knew how to love again. I promise I'll take care of them. Jonathan was crying when she looked up. She would have loved you, you know. Emma stood up and took his hand. I hope so, because I love them. The week before their 1-year anniversary of what Lily called the worst first date that turned into the best thing ever, Emma overheard 2 coworkers talking in the break room. Emma only got promoted because she's sleeping with the boss. She was a diner waitress a year ago. Now she's running a hotel? Give me a break, the other one laughed. Exactly. Some of us actually earned our positions. Emma stood outside the door, feeling like she'd been punched in the stomach, and every old insecurity she thought she'd buried came crawling back up. That same afternoon, a recruiter called with an offer from a luxury hotel chain, VP of Hospitality, $150,000 a year. And it was real, based purely on her hotel launch success, nothing to do with Jonathan. She could prove she wasn't just the boss's girlfriend, could prove she'd earned everything on her own, except taking it meant leaving, and she couldn't imagine her life without Sunday breakfasts and Lily's homework sessions and Jonathan's terrible jokes. She told Jonathan about the offer that night and watched his face do something complicated. Do you want to take it? He asked quietly. Emma wrapped her arms around herself. I want to know that I'm good enough on my own. Jonathan was quiet for a long time. You've always been good enough, Emma. The question is, do you believe that? Emma felt tears sliding down her face. I don't know. Jonathan pulled her close. Then figure it out. I'll be here either way. Lily found Emma the next day sitting in Caroline's old kitchen at the Sterling Room, and the kid climbed right into her lap like she always did. Are you leaving us? Lily's voice was so small it broke Emma's heart. I don't want to, but I'm scared that I'm not enough. Lily looked up at her with those big brown eyes that saw way too much. Mommy used to say being scared means you care, and you can't run away from things you care about. Emma hugged her tight. When did you get so wise? Lily smiled. Mommy taught me, and now you teach me. That's what mommies do. Emma went to Rosie's diner that night and slid into her old booth where she'd eaten thousands of meals, and Rosie herself came over with coffee. Heard you got a fancy offer. You taking it? Emma stared into her cup. I don't know. I just need to know I'm worth something on my own. Rosie sat down across from her. Baby girl, you were worth something when you walked in here at 18 with nothing but a GED and a dream. The job titles don't make you worthy. You were always worthy. Emma pulled out Caroline's journal one more time and found the last page. The hardest thing I ever did was accept help when I got sick. I wanted to do it alone. But love isn't about being strong enough to stand alone. It's about being brave enough to let someone stand with you. Let them love you, Emma. You deserve it. Emma called the recruiter the next morning and turned down the offer, and then she drove to the Sterling room where Jonathan had texted her to meet him. She walked in to find the cafe closed, candles everywhere, and photographs covering the walls. Caroline's photos on one side showing her life in dreams, and Emma's journey on the other, her first day at Pierce Industries and the hotel opening, and 100 moments with Lily and Jonathan that she didn't even know someone had been capturing. Jonathan stood in the middle with Lily beside him, and Emma started crying before he even opened his mouth. "I turned down the job," Emma said, and Jonathan smiled. "Why?" Emma walked toward them. "Because I already have everything I need, and I finally believe I deserve it." Jonathan got down on one knee and Lily started bouncing up and down. "1 year ago, I watched a terrible man try to make you feel small. But you were never small, Emma. You were just waiting for people who could see how big your heart is. You brought light back into our lives. Will you marry me?" Lily held up a sign that said, "Please say yes. I already designed my flower girl dress." And Emma was laughing and crying at the same time. "Yes, 1,000 times yes." Margaret appeared from the kitchen with champagne and Caroline's cinnamon rolls. Caroline knew. Somehow, she knew you'd find each other. 6 months later, they got married at the Sterling room with everyone they loved watching, and Lily wore the rainbow butterfly dress she designed herself and played piano during the ceremony. And when Emma walked down the aisle, she looked at Caroline's photo on the wall and whispered "thank you" before taking Jonathan's hand. His vows made everyone cry. "Caroline taught me how to love. You taught me how to love again." Emma's voice shook when she said hers. "I came here thinking I wasn't enough. You showed me I was always enough." 2 years later, Emma ran 5 Pierce hotels and still waitressed one Sunday a month at Rosie's to stay humble. And she'd started Caroline's Kitchen, a nonprofit teaching culinary skills to people who needed a second chance, just like she'd gotten. She was 6 months pregnant when they had Sunday breakfast at the Sterling room, and Lily asked the question they'd been waiting for. "What should we name the baby?" Emma and Jonathan looked at each other and smiled. "What about Caroline Rose?" "Caroline after your mom, Rose after Rosie, who gave me my first chance." Lily's whole face lit up. "Mommy would love that. Both mommies." Margaret brought over cinnamon rolls. "On the house, for the family that chose love." Emma looked at Caroline's photo still hanging on the wall. "Thank you for the magic. It was real, just like you promised." Sometimes the worst moments lead to the best outcomes. A cruel rejection became a love story. $43 in a borrowed dress became a hospitality empire. A dead woman's kindness became a living legacy. Because Emma didn't just find love that night, she found her worth, and sometimes that's the most important love story of all. If this reminded you that you're enough exactly as you are, hit that subscribe button and share this with someone who needs to hear it. The right person won't make you feel small. They'll show you how extraordinary you've always been. Thanks for being here with us.